are applicable for being in the cloud and what applications are applicable for not being in the cloud. Look at what applications can be private and what applications, if you look at them, you say, you know what, because of the sensitivity of the data, I'm never going to go public with those. So it looks something like this. You have your core legacy systems. Those may be things, and we'll talk about that just aren't the right things because of integration and customization that you even think about putting into the cloud. You may have a hosted private cloud. It may be on-prem. You may have a cloud provider who helps you on-prem, or it may be off-prem. You can do things from your development environment, your Web 2.0 platforms, your business intelligence platforms, and on demand, you may crunch some numbers. You may do some things on temporary storage, with Amazon. So, what are some key things about hybrid cloud? First of all, it's flexible. You mix and match what you need when you need it. It's realistic. It's looking at your business and you're saying, you know what? Not all resources can or should be in the public cloud. It's managed risk. In your line of business, from what I understand, one of the major things that you do is risk management. So you got compliance issues, you got performance issues, you have safety issues, you got security restrictions, and more importantly, it's conservative. You can start a little bit. When you go hybrid, you can look at putting a few things out into the public and move from there. So we're going to switch gears. That kind of set the stage. Like I said, it may have been a bit school book report, whatever, but at least we're all talking about the cloud from one perspective. So the next few things are going to be, what are some of the questions you should think about? Because at least when I started in the business about 30 years ago, I learned the hard way, it's not having the answer, it's having the right question. And sometimes it's the obvious questions that you miss, and those are the things that come back and they bite you. So from an availability point of view, how aggressive are your SLAs? Can you afford to have an outage? Okay, let's talk about those things that are out there in the news right now, from VMware Foundry to talking about Amazon. Can you afford an outage? What's going to happen to your business, okay, if this application is not available? Do you require 24/7? Do you need follow the sun? These aren't exhaustive questions, but these are the type of simple, basic questions that you need to walk through and think about from a business point of view before you decide, oh, we're going to go to the cloud. Performance. Response time. Some things you can have latency. Some things, you know, it's okay. In fact, you can FedEx it, crunch your numbers, and then bring it back over our partner Rigstar or somebody like that. Do you have seasonal fluctuations? Are there times when your workload goes up, goes down? You got to think about that. Again, I'll drive home capacity planning. How mature is your capacity planning model? Do you really know what it requires? Because what you'll find out is that you can have an application, it may not be tuned, and it doesn't matter. Because in your own data center, on your own hardware, you don't care if it only has 10%. The other 90 is sitting there. You go put it in somebody's cloud, and you start paying for CPUs, you start paying for transport costs, and all of a sudden you realize this application's a dog, and you have issues. So you need to think about that from a capacity plan, and you need to think about that from performance. Security. What kind of internal security controls do you have? Data integrity, your data access? Do you have mature audit and governance structures? already in place? What kind of standards do you have to deal with? I know a lot of times when we work with some of our foreign clients, when we talk about the cloud, they're worried about the Patriot Act in the States. And they say, hey, you know what? We like this stuff, Jeff, this is a good idea, but you got to find a partner to work with because we're not putting our stuff in New Jersey with you, and we're not going to put it in Pennsylvania. And those are just the things you got to think about. Sometimes, from a jurisdictional point of view, they don't want it to leave the province or the state or whatever you want to call it, the county. Those things happen. So, on balance, these are the things you've got to think about. I won't read them to you. I'll let you look at those. Compliance and security. You got to look at it from a global point of view. Business continuity, disaster recovery, mobility, virtualization, infrastructure independence, and then can you sustain it? So how do you get there? Pretty academic. Assess, enable your applications, deploy, support and maintenance. So assessment. Second bullet is kind of interesting. Something we ran into in particular when we talk about Arlington County and Washington, D.C. I'm going to put up a case study on that. It had nothing to do with the technology. It had to do with how they do business every day. And all of a sudden, when they were going to bring us in to run a private cloud for them, and the whole discussion on, is it on their premise or is it on our premise, and all of the business process things that have to change, that second bullet, are you ready to embrace the cloud, all of a sudden hit them square in the forehead. Second to the last bullet, can't emphasize enough, your SLA requirements. You have to think about how they may change when it's no longer in your direct control. Do you want to monitor everything even though it's in the cloud, or do you want your service provider to do that? So, there are some applications. Here's something that we like to look at. We like to say, what's the implementation challenge? Is it easy to move to the cloud? Is it medium? Is it hard? And what's the value to the organization? This is just our take on it. There's no magic take. You can decide for yourselves, but it's something that we would tell you that you should think about. So legacy systems usually are not good candidates. First of all, you got a lot of custom code. You've got integration issues that you have to deal with, and for the time it takes to do it, the payback that you get isn't always there for the organization. Second of all, we lumped together, we said sensitive applications. Could be the way you run your books. It could be in your business, some of that reservoir modeling and some of those things that you do. I think somebody mentioned earlier about industrial espionage and all those good things. There's some things that you may get a little bit of payback if you put them in the cloud, but you may not be that easy to do. And how do you divide what you'll do in the private cloud that you don't want anybody to look at, and then you're going to send to Google or Amazon or somebody because you need their compute power? Second of all, if you're doing your own software development and testing, not a bad candidate. In your industry, you still got a lot of batch things. You have some data intensive things. And of course, if you have a new business, by all means, you should look at how can I leverage the cloud approach, because it may not last. So I'll go through a few of these fast. Application enablement. Is it rich internet? Is your application, do you have standardization across your applications on everything from what type of chips do they run on, to what type of operating systems, to what type of databases, what kind of standardization do you have there? It's something to think about. I already talked about performance and scalability, and then the whole thing on multi-tenancy enablement, if that's important to you. If it's in the private cloud, you're probably not going to think about that. And then, of course, integration services. One of the issues you always run into is not everything goes to the cloud. So if it doesn't, it has to talk to the other things. And integration isn't just networking, okay? So you have to work through those things. And deployment. Support and maintenance. So I'll let you look at this, read it. This is from a colleague of mine in Accenture. And essentially he's saying the train's leaving the station. Okay, it's already taken off. People are already thinking about how to do this and how they're going to use it. So here are some of the things that are going on in energy and utilities. So you got complex data, you got 3D, 4D modeling, you got intense preventive maintenance, you want to do more storage, more virtualization. That's one of the drivers. High pressure on margins. We just heard in the presentation from Russ, how do you do startups in remote locations? How do you think about that when you're going to a new drilling site? What's the package that you go with? How hard is it? How easy is it to do that? And how do you do that and reduce your IT procurement at the same time? More importantly, what I'd said a little earlier in this talk is 70% is going on maintenance and operating cost. How do you get a handle on that and manage that? Real-time data. I don't know an industry out there that we work with that isn't talking about big data or real-time data. I'll talk to the one right next to you all. If you look at the utilities, real-time data. All of a sudden they're saying, hey, I'm going to do these smart meter reads and I've got all this data coming and I need it real time. You have similar things going on the energy side with oil and gas. Integration and standardization. I don't know about now, but when I started right out of college, my first job was with Union Oil. With Union Oil, I was involved in research, and I was working on shale rock, shale oil. And what I remember from that was the silos that they were in between research development, exploration, production, all of those things. And it's kind of funny because when I went to the telecom systems, to that